Today we are going to be talking about the Warner Brothers Entertainment Incorporation. Warner Brothers is a company that we've seen that's very prominent in our lives today. And I was really curious to know more about the company. I don't know very much about it, and I do now, but I didn't going into it, and so I'm excited to share with you guys what I learned. So, Warner Brothers is headquartered in California. They were founded in 1923. They, right now, are really big in television, video games, but they're one of America's big six in the entertainment world, and so they're very popular. As we can see in this photo, there's four brothers. So the first brother is Harry, the second brother is Albert, then we have Sam and Jack. Now, Jack is the youngest Warner, and all the older three brothers, Harry, Albert, and Sam, they all immigrated from Poland to Canada as young children, and then Jack was actually born in Canada. So, a little history of their family. Their current day revenue is about $13 billion, and they have about 8,000 employees, which is pretty impressive. So, in the umbrella of Warner Media, we have a lot of different divisions. So we have Warner Media Pictures, Warner Brother Pictures, Warner Brother Home Entertainment, Warner Brother Television Group, Warner Brother Animations, DC Entertainment, Warner Brothers Digital Networks, Warner Brother Technology, Warner Brothers Consumer Products, Warner Brothers Theater Ventures, Warner Brothers Studios Facilities, and Water Tower Music. So that's a lot. They have definitely branched off into a lot of different categories, but as we'll go through today a little bit of the history, you'll see where these kind of emerged and in what time period, and what kind of prompted these brothers to do this. So the three other brothers, they opened their first theater in Newcastle, Pennsylvania in 1903. So this first picture is from Rin Tin Tin. Not sure if you guys are familiar with it, but this dog was brought from France after World War I by an American soldier, and he really helped Warner Brothers establish their reputation. Rin Tin Tin was debuted in a feature of Where the North Begins, which is the movie. And the movie was so successful that Jack, the youngest brother, signed the dog star in more films for $1,000 per week, which is crazy to think about, but he instantly became the studio's pop star. Now, that being said, there was still a lot of financial problems and struggles. There's a lot of investment that goes into media, and so Jack named the German Shepherd the mortgage lifter because of his success and the way that he really helped launch the Warner Brothers. So Sam and Jack decided to offer actor John Barrymore to the lead role of Boo Burmell, and the film was a success, and it caused him to have a long-term contract. Now, as we've been studying Disney and things like that, it's interesting to compare, but Warner Brothers, they pioneered the first few films that had synchronized sounds. They used to call it talking pictures or talkies in 1925. And so there was a huge argument. The brothers didn't really agree because there was a lot of investment that went into adding music to film. And so Sam, after a while, after Sam's request, Harry's finally agreed, and he said you can do it as long as the sounds are background music only. And so the Warner signed the contract with the sound engineers, Western Electric, and they established a video phone, and this image that you see now is a video phone, and it helps make the film with music and effects, and it just has really great features that stepped up filmmaking. These films were very short in the beginning, and gradually got longer as they got more aware of the technology. So, with the collapse of the market, musicals were just not a huge hit, and so they turned to more socially realistic storylines, and so many of the films were about gangsters. Warner Brothers soon became known as the Gangster Studio, according to sources. One of their first gangster films was Little Caesar. In 1934, the studio lost over $2.5 million, and about 500,000 of that was a result of a fire. Their Burbank studio in 1934 burned down, destroying over 20 years worth of videograph for the Warner Brothers. So they definitely had their ups and downs, and that was one of them. So in 1937, the studio hired a Midwestern radio announcer that we all are slightly familiar with, Ronald Reagan. Although Reagan was initially a B-film actor, Warner Brothers was impressed by his performance, and they asked him to come and be a part of the scene in Canoe Rockney, All-American, and he also agreed to be with them in the Santa Fe trials. And so Reagan, he eventually did return to B films after his performance at the studio, but he definitely helped the Warner Brothers and became one of their top stars. Warner Brothers decided to sign a contract for him, bringing him back and actually tripling his salary. So I found that really interesting. I didn't know that about Ronald Reagan. From 1930 to 1933, Disney was really starting to pick up, and one of their alumni, two of them actually, they produced a bunch of cartoons for Warner Brothers and sold them to the Warner Brothers. And one of their characters were Bisco in the first Looney Tunes cartoons, and that was back in 1931 when they really started cranking out that cartoons, and they were famous, like I said before, until about 1933. The Warner Brothers brought Schletzinger's cartoons unit. It was another cartoon unit. They bought it in 1944 and they renamed it the Warner Brother Cartoons. So this is an example of one of those divisions that I talked about earlier that we can see really getting started up all the way back in 1944. So back to Looney Tunes characters such as Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Tweety Bird, and Porky Pig, Lester. They became central to the company's image in the subsequent decades. We are very familiar with them now. I know they are characters that really help me know and point back to Warner Brothers in general. The success of these characters really prompted the Warner Brothers to organize Warner Animations, and so another division that we talked about, and they started producing new materials and things like that. So during World War II, Harry, he decided to focus the films more on war, and he thought it would be a good idea to talk about really current day events and be able to bring light into what was going on in the world. But unfortunately, the audience, they were kind of tired of war films. They not only were living it, but their entertainment was now all about war, and so that didn't go over super well, and he ended up losing a lot of money from that. After World War II, the studio actually prospered greatly. People started coming back, families were reunited, and they reached a profit about $19 million, which is crazy. So on January 5th in 1984, Warner offered the first colored covering. It was actually of the Rose Parades and the Rose Bowl game. So this is interesting that he decided to go down this track as well. In the early 1956, the threat of television emerged, and so Jack decided to sort of get into the 3D film. One of them being The House of War that I have imaged in front of you. And the 3D films really lost their appeal, and they just weren't visually appealing, and the audiences did not prefer them. So 1956, the studio was losing money. I know earlier I told you that they were in $19 million revenue, and at this point they were back down to the $2.9 million revenue, which for a large company like theirs was not very much. And so the Warner Brothers actually, in 1956, decided to put their corporation on the market. In 1955, the studio finally, they really started to get on the television. They, like I said earlier, they weren't doing very well money-wise, and so they tried a new revenue. They put shows on the TV, and ABC showed them weekly Warner Brothers presentations. They rotated shows based on three film successes, Kings Row, Casablanca, and Cheyenne, which Cheyenne was a Western film. They promoted the new films, they rotated them, they did what they could to get on the television, and it just truly was not a success. So, like I said, the next year they ended up putting the studio on the market. Continuing on, in 1958, the studio launched Warner Bros. Records, which they made their television stars. And so the records were based on television soundtracks. Warner Brothers were already an owner of extensive music, and so those tunes had been already shown countless of times. And so what they did was they added them to television shows and really began to make those songs popular. With the success of the studios in 1964, they filmed My Fair Lady and its soundtrack, and it was a huge success for them. In 1995, Warner and station owner Tribune Company of Chicago, they launched WB Television Network. WB, their earliest program was really based on the teenage audience, and so I'm not sure if you guys remember Buffy Vampire Slayer, Smallville, Dawson's Creek, and of course One Tree Hill. They were really the earlier additions for this programming, and we still know about them today, which is really cool. So 1996, the Warner Brothers celebrated their 75th anniversary, which seems crazy. In 2006, Warner and CBS, they decided to close the WB and CBS, and so they actually jointly launched a new network, CW Television Network. So, yeah, interesting how that all just played out in the way that they grew their business and changed their business philosophies and joined with other companies as well. And so in the late 1990s, I'm not sure if you guys can guess it, but the Warner Brothers, they obtained the rights to the Harry Potter novels, and they released features of those. There are multiple films, as you guys know, and it was a huge hit for the Warner Brothers. Truly allowed them to get back on their feet and do really well as a company. So the Harry Potter film series, they were worldwide. They were the highest grossing film series of all time at that time. And so, yeah, they earned more than $1 billion in revenue worldwide, which was really awesome for them and their company. So that's a little history of Warner Brothers. If we look at most recent, so 2014, they came out with the Lego Movie. 2007 is when I Am Legend came out, and then in 2009 was when The Blind Side came out, and these are the 23rd, 24th, and 25th top movie for the company. And so these are really big hits, bringing in a lot of money for the organization, and are the things that we will remember today. So thank you guys for listening, and thank you for just being willing to learn more. So I hope you guys have a great day.